Okay, so I'm going to be going through this very quickly. And I'm just going to do it very quickly because I don't want to make the video too long. So, I wanted to explain how hypnosis is inhibiting me. It's also inhibiting, like, one of the methods is inhibiting my memory, and what I've noticed that I can distinguish from, like, the hypnosis causing repression of memory and then just occasional forgetfulness was the speech inhibition is distinguishably caused by hypnosis because hypnosis makes speech feel strained compared to forgetfulness. Um, and like in the forgetfulness context, I don't feel like the action of speaking is difficult or strained or forced. Um, but with a hypnosis, it feels like that. It's very distinguishably noticeable to me, but it probably is not to others. And I've had issues with people not understanding that before. So, anyways, I also have to write these things down because the hypnosis inhibits my memory while I'm speaking. It breaks things up, um, makes people lose focus and attention, and also makes me take a lot longer than I should. So, I made like two previous videos. The first one was like an hour and a half explaining the same thing. The second one was only like 21 minutes. So I'm trying to get this one done very quickly, hopefully in like less than 10 minutes. So a post-hypnotic suggestion is an instruction given during hypnosis. Some examples of post-hypnotic suggestions would be like feeling dizzy, right? So while telling a person to feel dizzy, when they wake up from hypnosis while they are in hypnosis. Um, and then when they wake up from hypnosis, they might feel dizzy or confused, disoriented, dysphoria, nausea, drowsiness, to experience memory loss. Um, these are examples of possible post hypnotic suggestions um, that can be given to a person. So these are instructions given during hypnosis, and that's what they call a post hypnotic suggestion. So you have to understand that in order to get the context I'm going to describe here. So they told me that they were going to take me to the laundromat and hypnotize me to feel dizzy, confused, disoriented, dysphoria, nausea, drowsiness, to experience memory loss, and a variety of other unpleasant and inhibiting post-hypnotic suggestions. Whenever I was learning anything or doing anything that could help me reverse the effects of hypnosis or obtain and disclose evidence of me being abused with hypnosis, they hypnotized me to feel like my brain was spinning in a washing machine on the spin cycle, turning to mush when these post-hypnotic suggestions were cued or triggered, and they told me that they were doing that to me because they were, quote, brainwashing me. Um, so you can imagine, like, it causes a lot of confusion why they even told me that, and it's obviously very, specific and, an accurate metaphorical description of, what they did to me. So, delusions don't delusions or other medical conditions like dementia, Alzheimer's, brain injury, or like drug use or sleep deprivation. None of those will cause a person to develop a very specific metaphor like that, right? Um, that's one example of why I just know the difference. So, moving on, they gave me three conditions to not trigger or cue the post hypnotic suggestions, which were if I were to notice I was being abused with hypnosis, if someone else would notice that I was hypnotized, or unless they would get caught for it. And the first instruction, so that has variation because at first what I also noticed was they tried to make the post hypnotic suggestions subtle or unnoticeable to try to decrease resistance to the post hypnotic suggestion, and that's why they tried to use that suggestion, but sometimes, like, it would just happen anyways. And regardless, if it didn't work, they would do it anyways, if necessary, to control my behavior. And there we go. That's how I explain it. So I am intelligent. I've graduated high school a year early and started college a year early and obtained A's and B's in all my classes with little to no effort. And since reading quickly and completing college assignments quickly on a regular basis was necessary in order for me to pass my classes, and it was very noticeable and suspicious whenever I experienced cognitive inhibition, inability to read at a normal rate, inability to write at a normal speed, abnormal confusion, memory loss, amnesia, repression of memory, or inability to complete tasks in a reasonable amount of time. There was that for as an example. So then they also, I remember also being told about a boiling frog example, metaphor. And the metaphor with boiling a frog was like, I remember learning this in school even, like, when you boil a frog, if you put the frog immediately in hot water, the frog will jump out because the, temperature difference is very noticeable, right? Very extreme. So, you can boil a frog without them hopping out, though, if you boil them very, starting like if you put them in room temperature water and then you slowly increase the heat, right? So basically the concept being is like if the water was post-hypnotic suggestion, and it was very intense, then I would immediately try to resist it, like hop out of the water, but if it was not, right, it was very subtle, then, I would sit and simmer at least for a little while. And if that didn't work, then they would use more extreme methods, even if it was noticeable, as a last resort. So, one example of this was I was hypnotized to feel extremely dizzy when I was trying to fill out apartment applications, and only when I was filling out apartment applications on my laptop. So, like, because that's the only place I tried to. Didn't happen when I was playing music or any other situation. It was very abrupt, sudden, and intense. So, like in order to stop the dizziness, I had to, it felt like the room was spinning. In order to stop the dizziness, I had to close my laptop or do something else, like, closing the apartment application tabs and searches. Anyways, so moving on, let's see. It became more suspicious and noticeable when these suggestions were suddenly cued or triggered to very specific events, because the onset of the hypnotic suggestions would suddenly initiate in response to the cue/trigger, because these feelings and sensations do not begin and end abruptly in normal day-to-day life. Like the dizziness, right? That just doesn't happen normally. That's not coincidence. So one technique they used to control my behavior was by repression or minimizing feelings of anger and fear, and even the intensity of the post-hypnotic suggestions, so that I would tolerate the suggestions, or specifically so I wouldn't record myself. And then as evidence of, being hypnotized, right? And the post-hypnotic suggestions used to inhibit my ability to learn or obtain and disclose evidence of me being abused with hypnosis seem to have similar characteristics to hypnosis seals, which use post-hypnotic suggestions to prevent a person from becoming hypnotized again. So these can, some examples can be like uncontrollable crying or laughing, nausea, intense itchiness, feeling intensely hot or cold, anxiety, or other post-hypnotic suggestions that can inhibit hypnotic induction, or at least make it more difficult to induce hypnosis, that are triggered and cued by the word hypnosis, or when someone is trying to hypnotize a subject. So, very pretty simple concept to understand, and how those things can make it difficult to induce a person into hypnosis. Sometimes they'll even use other post-hypnotic suggestions, such as one example that I read was there was a client that every time the hypnotist tried to proceed with the next step in the hypnotic induction, the client would take off another article of clothing, or sometimes even having the subject swear or become aggressive or yell, just an attempt to like prevent the hypnotist from doing it, because they would think it was something else and not hypnosis, for example. At least very commonly, unless you were able to recognize that and diagnose it, or not necessarily diagnose it, because it's not necessarily a diagnosis, but recognize it and identify it. So let's see. They did a lot of things like that to me to prevent me from becoming hypnotized. Some things you can do to get around that are like, using multiple hypnotists to facilitate a hypnotic induction, or, using kinesthetic inductions, like or inductions that will make you focus on sensations of touch and feeling, to get you out of your head more, to make you focus more, because you need to focus in order for hypnosis to work. So I've noticed from experience that the post-hypnotic suggestions to prevent me from being hypnotized were triggered and cued in the same context and circumstances as the hypnotic suggestions to inhibit learning and inhibiting my ability to organize and gather evidence, where the post-hypnotic suggestions were only triggered while I was specifically engaging in those behaviors and were not triggered if someone else would notice or if they would get caught for it, so that the suggestions would go unnoticed by other people. Like that was the context and when in which they did it, making it appear in not noticeable and visible. It wasn't necessarily just triggered by the word hypnosis, but it was more like subtly and elaborately planned, so that the hypnotist wouldn't recognize it and just try to make it seem like I couldn't be hypnotized, or at least present the image that I couldn't be hypnotized. So, the the same context and circumstances as the hypnotic suggestions to inhibit learning and inhibiting my ability to organize and gather evidence, where the post-hypnotic suggestions were only triggered while I was specifically engaging in those behaviors and were not triggered if someone else would notice or if they would get caught for it, so that the suggestions would go undetected by other people. Hypnosis has controlled my sleeping patterns in several settings, including being hypnotized to feel sudden intense drowsiness, which would progress to sleep onset within 2 to 3 minutes following the post-hypnotic suggestion that the event I was thinking about was too much for me to handle, and as a method of limiting the amount of time that I would spend thinking about being abused, and to make me trust the people who hypnotized me and to think they were trying to help me deal with a negative event, and controlling sleeping patterns consistent with what is necessary to conceal symptoms of insomnia and the resulting medical malpractice case that prevented me from opening. The hypnosis was also used to inhibit and prevent sleep onset and induce an inability to stay asleep suddenly and unexpectedly, so that I would not be able to expect or prepare for these intentional sleep disturbances and replicate sleep deprivation symptoms, to inhibit cognition, to conceal the fact that the cognitive inhibition was being caused by hypnosis. Last part that I need to include is, kind of like a disclaimer of behavior, right? I noticed that they tried to hypnotize. One of the methods they used, and this was to like kind of distract me from what they were trying, what their objective was with it, right? So they hypnotized me to like feel angry, or say for example to feel scared, but they would hypnotize me to imagine like one of the people. I got hypnotized by 8 different people. One of the people being angry or scared of me instead of me being angry or scared, right? And the reason they did that was to elicit confusion, to distract me, as well as it would be a method to make me make a facial reaction, elicit an emotional response, react to it in a way that they can control. That way, I would be consciously distracted by, having that abstract, confusing thought, and, imagination, right? Of, you know, them being angry or scared, like angry at me or scared of me. Um, because then, they would distract me with that concept, right? With that thought, so that I would, you know, they would, so that I would make a abnormal, facial gesture, um, and not notice it. And that way they would be able to make it look like, you know, I had some type of nervous tick or something while I was writing, or replicate some type of symptom of mental illness. And similar to what they do with hypnosis, because like with a metaphor, they'll distract you with like the story, but you know they'll kind of conceal the message, kind of like the frog boiling thing. Metaphor, it's like the message is, you know, if you start out subtly, then they won't notice. But that message, like, it goes directly like into your unconscious, right? Because your mind is occupied with like imagining, you know, like the frog situation boiling, or you know, simmering to a boil. And anyways, that's the video. It's a little bit longer than I wanted, but it should work. Have a great day, and thanks for enjoying and thank you for your time.